YouTube, Rook here from Rook Geek. Goodness, my little channel web for all things geeky and cool, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to another action figure and unboxing video. This figure is a pretty new figure we're talking about in this video. Came out pretty recently. I know that I ordered it at I believe the beginning of, actually the end of 2020 rather, but it didn't ship out until supposedly from the Hasbro Pulse store in June. I luckily canceled that order and found this at a local Target a few weeks ago. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the Star Wars Black Series 6-inch scale Bo-Katan Kryze. Now, if you're not familiar with Bo-Katan Kryze, she did debut in the live action show, of course, The Mandalorian, from our guy right here, the Beskar version of Mandalorian. And of course, she's played by the indomitable Katie Saarthoff. If you're not familiar, she played Starbuck on the new reimagining of Battlestar Galactica in the early 2000s. But this looked like a really cool figure. As soon as they dropped this on the Hasbro Pulse store, I bit on it. I knew for a fact I had to buy this figure. As I mentioned, I canceled the Hasbro Pulse store, but I wanted this one right here. But before we do anything further, I want to thank all my viewers and subscribers who did follow my content and always watch my content and videos. If you're someone who's new, never watched any of my content before, please give this video a like at the bottom page, and please remember to subscribe to the channel. It will absolutely help the channel grow and send this content across the YouTube platform for other people looking for action figure reviews to find them. So of course we're talking about Bo-Katan Kryze, as I mentioned before. This was her live action version using kind of the face scanning technology. It looks pretty close to Katie Saarthoff. Is it an exact representation of her? No, but it's pretty good. Price point, if I remember correctly, was $25 US. I didn't have to worry about paying shipping because, as I mentioned, I canceled the Hasbro Pulse store version and went strict to the Target version here. So let's take a look at the packaging and presentation like we always do in the breakdown segment. This is your newer window box design, just like the Mandalorian figure here, which has that really cool curve. You can see it right here. The older packaging for Star Wars Black Series doesn't have this really cool slant, which you'll see when we spin it in 360 here on the turntable. You'll see the slant in the design. But of course, we have the Black Series logo right here. A great window box of Katie Saarthoff, or in this case, Bo-Katan. We have her helmet, her blasters, and her backpack, which is already attached to the figure. I have to take it out of the packaging to see if it's an accessory, if you can remove the backpack or not. I'm not sure yet. Over here, of course, I mentioned before, the black stripe, the really cool slant design. This is you can see from the top of the packaging, it's angled. It might be hard to see on camera, but this angles at like a 45-degree. And I think the idea of this is basically sitting on, let's say, the shelf. You get a really cool representation of it. You can see it kind of there on that angle. That'd be even better right there, of that slant design. So it looks pretty cool. Put, of course, Mandalorian aside. As I mentioned, the slant right here. The back of the packaging is a nice little write-up for Bo-Katan. Some really cool artwork right here. If you want to pause it, you can. This is in different languages. If you want to read about Bo-Katan Kryze, you're more than welcome to. I'm probably butchering her last name, but she's really known as just Bo-Katan. That's what she's really known as. They really don't say her last name a whole lot, from what I personally see. So let's take her on the turntable here so you can see it spinning in 360. A great-looking figure. I wanted more of the Mandalorian-based figures, especially coming from, of course, Mando right here. I thought, you know, why not do another one from the Mandalorian series? There's one based on Sasha Banks, which I haven't put an order in for that figure yet. I'm not 100% sold if I want to buy that figure. If I want to have, let's say, the squad, I think it's called Death Watch. I think the name of the squad is called Death Watch. That's Bo-Katan's group. I'm not sure if I want to get any more figures or not, or just go with Bo-Katan and Mandalorian. I think they're both good figures, and that's my thought process. So with that being said, let's take it off the turntable spinning, leave it stationary, and let's get Bo-Katan Kryze out of packaging and continue the breakdown segment. Alright guys, we have our Star Wars Black Series Bo-Katan Kryze out of packaging. The next thing we do to take a figure out of packaging is look at the paint, articulation, and of course the accessories. And there's a lot really packed into this figure. When I was looking at it off camera, just getting the first impressions of the figure, looking at the paint, the sculpt, the articulation, of course the gear, I was pleasantly surprised. Remember, everyone who's watching this sort of content or is a collector themselves, this industry is mainly dominated by male collectors. And they usually don't buy female action figures. Hasbro nailed this figure, guys. If I stopped the video right now and went to final thoughts, it would be 100% buy. Absolutely. Even if you're not a fan of, let's say, Bo-Katan the Mandalorian, just for the design and the execution of this figure is spot on. Better than even most male action figures you can find on the market right now. This thing is loaded with value, loaded with articulation rather, and loaded with just a lot of just cool factor baked into this figure. Of course, it was at $25 price point. Let's really focus first on that head sculpt. well, the portrait as they call it here, of course, Bo-Katan, Katie Sarkoff, Battlestar Galactica fame, as we mentioned before at the beginning of this video. I like to be pleasantly surprised. I like to be wrong, basically. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I thought the head sculpt was just okay. This is a really good head sculpt. Taking a step back and looking at, let's say, the stock photos of Katie Sarkoff, Bo-Katan, and The Mandalorian, this is a pretty damn good representation of her, better than I thought it was. This is a very, very cool figure. The design as a whole is really, really cool. The teal outfit, the arm guards, the shoulder pads up to the high shoulders, the legs have the teal, the knee pads have teal, you have the darker color outfit throughout the entire figure. This right here, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the backpack. Is this an accessory? I'm pleasantly surprised you can remove it. This would be an additional accessory to the figure if you wanted to, have it with the figure, without the figure. I'll take up-close shots of all the gear so you can see it here, but this, of course, kind of showcases the same color scheme as Bo-Katan. Simple plug point in the back right here, standard single point back peg. You just simply plug it in and you're good to go. Snug fit, it's not going to fall out. It is tight, it's not going to drop the figure. As I mentioned, this thing has a ton of just a cool factor just baked into it. I keep using that word, but there's a lot of coolness baked into the figure. Let's break down now. We talked about the paint and the way it looks. Let's talk about the articulation. This thing has better articulation than I have seen in most action figures nowadays, and that's saying a lot. So let's take a look at what amount of articulation you have in the figure. Let's look at the top of the figure first. The head will spin 360. There is up, there is down. Not a whole lot, but you got some movement here. The arms are very cool because the shoulders go up on you hear it click into place. And what's cool is the shoulder pad rides up underneath the portion of the shoulder, so allows this joint to move. It's not like the Mandalorian one when we did that original review months ago and the shoulder pauldron broke. This was sort of linked into it, and it was designed so it slides underneath the shoulder itself, so you have the movement, you're not hindered in any way. Love that design. Here's where the cool factor really comes into play. You have a single jointed elbow, which it looks like right here. See how the bend is? But this entire arm, this joint, is on a 360 spin too. The whole arm breaks and spins. You can see it right there. It looks very, very awkward. See how the arm looks very bent to the other direction? Normally people can't do this, and I know that, but it gives you full range of motion. I love the way this thing goes. I'll show it again here. The arm spins completely on a ball joint right here. The arm still does bend. It's a single jointed elbow basically, but with a 360 rotation joint in the elbow itself. Very, very cool design. The wrist itself, this guard, doesn't give you articulation spinning this way. You have spinning this way, but the wrist itself, the forearm, this portion, this whole joint does not spin. Hands do spin 360. This is the same for both arms. The chest right here, you don't really have a super amount of articulation right here in the chest rocker. You get about that far, which is pretty good. I have no problem with that. There's no clicky joint, but it does give you a good amount of articulation going forward and back. The chest here does spin 360 at the waist. So you can spin 360, you can have her looking behind herself, which is pretty cool. It does spin, so it doesn't feel like an elastic piece in here, like the old school G.I. Joes would hold it in place. So you spin the body 360, as I mentioned before, right here. Very good articulation. Now let's look at the bottom of the figure. The legs themselves, we'll put the arms up. Legs right here, you can get a decent kick. About, I would say, 45 degrees, or less than 45 degrees, about close to 45 degrees. You can, if you bend the leg further back this way, you can get it much higher, but that's kind of cheating. There is a thigh swivel here. There is a silver plate right here. There is spinning here at the thigh. You can get it, going this way, so you basically break the leg. That's what would happen here. But you can twist it fully at that joint. There is a seam here. I'll get a close shot so you can see the seam right here in the leg, which is, of course, this leg right here. Right here, you'll see the seam. So you can tell when it's lined up or not. You can swivel the leg like this, so you know when it's straight or not. The knee is very, very interesting because you get a double jointed, almost like a double jointed knee, but you get about that level of bend right here. The leg can go back a good distance as well. So you get a real good amount of articulation. This seems like a piece of plastic that's built into the knee. It looks like it's glued on. Yes, it is glued on. This little rubber blue bit, which to me might be a problem because over time I can see this rubber degenerating and just breaking down. I can see that happening if you have a lot of play with the figures, if you're playing with these figures a lot, if you're doing more than just displaying the figures or collecting them. If you are, let's say, playing with the figures, let's say you're a young child or young kid, you might play with your toys. And that's what toys are built for, guys. They're built to be played with and collected. So that could happen. This joint can go away. There is nice weathering on those knee pads. You can see the weathering right there. There's nice weathering on these boot guards as well. I didn't mention that before, but there's weathering there. And the last bit here, the leg does swivel. This is another weird joint I was talking about. Just like that elbow, this whole joint spins 360. Very, very bizarre. Why they gave you a 360 kind of a ball joint here, this whole leg breaks and spins 360. Now, I don't know if Hasbro going in this direction, going forward, is going to be this level of articulation. That's why I said it's very, very weird. I don't see articulation doing this. You can see the entire leg spinning 360 here. It looks very, very weird, as you can see me posing it here. Usually legs don't do this. You just got, like, let's say a single jointed elbow, a single jointed knee rather, and that's it. So you can't spin this whole thing here 360. See me swiveling it left and right. Most figures doesn't allow this level of articulation. You'll see it going this way here also, guys. That way, and then this way. You can really break the figure down literally and do it into really, really weird dynamic poses if you wanted to. So that's very, very cool. Last bit of articulation on the feet. You can spin the feet 360 and they go up and down, not all the way back, but you get a good level of articulation on the boots. Again, 360 right there. A lot of figures do that 360. Now let's talk about the beginning portions of the accessories. But before I do that, let's look at those holsters. They are functional holsters. They're just basically rubber. You see this belt she has right here from the holsters dangling from both the left side and right side of the figure. They are rubber. Again, much like the knee pads, will they eventually degrade and break down? They could, but they're much thicker than these knee pads. So I do like that, and they look really well done. The back of the figure, you can see there's some color paint on the back here, like silver chains, like they're connected back there. Some little nice attention to detail Hasbro did with those little silver dots right there. Now let's focus on accessories. Put her aside real quick. First, let's talk about the two weapons she comes with. Besides, we know the backpack, which we showcased off already. She comes with two pistols. I'll get up-close shots of these so you can see what they look like. What makes these pistols rather unique is that the trigger has been removed. Hopefully you can see it there. The trigger has been cut away, and that is kind of important because when you place these in her hand, it looks like she has her finger on a trigger. You don't have to worry about slipping the figure through a trigger guard. Normally, that's the issue you usually run into with these particular figures, is they usually have problems with triggers. There we go. Right there, and she's good to go. So when she's armed, she would look something like this. I'll put her in some really cool poses. So some B-rolls so you can see what it would look like. But even, just a standard pose like that looks pretty cool. But again, she looks really neat. These are functional. I'll showcase that off in a second. You can just strip her of her guns and put them in the holsters. I do think they look really, really good. This gives me the feeling of, let's say, a Captain Rex with pistols, or maybe a Sabine Wren with pistols, because we've seen many different action figures supporting pistols. She does not come, if you're going to ask, does she come with an extra set of hands so you could swap out? So instead of using a set of pistols, hands, like gripping fingers, can you? No, that's how it looks. So again, looks really good. Let's move her arms up out of the way so you can see what it looks like with those pistols here. Again, looks pretty cool with the pistols in place. So you can have her with her guns sheathed or in their holsters if you want to, which is very, very cool. Last accessory is her helmet, the Mandalorian helmet, which looks really, really cool. Different sort of helmet than Mando would look, and different than, let's say, a Sabine Wren's helmet would look, or even Boba Fett's helmet. Looks really, really good. And you're going to ask me, Rook, does the rangefinder work? It in fact does. You can drop the rangefinder right there. So if you're looking to the rangefinder have articulation, it does indeed. So I do like the way this looks. Looks really, really good. Great work on the paint here on the helmet. The nice wash, the attention to detail looks really, really good. Let's put it with the helmet on her so you can see what she looks like with the helmet. But she looks really, really good. They did a very, very good job with this figure, guys, all things considered. The figure of Bo-Katan Kryze, definitely worth it in my personal opinion. One of the better female figures I have personally seen for years of collecting that they've designed from Hasbro. It really showcases off the character. I love the Death Watch symbols on her shoulder pad, which I didn't mention before. It kind of looks like she's the backpack. One other note of detail, which I didn't talk about, is that if you look here, there are brown straps going across the top of her shoulders. This gives the illusion like the backpack is being held by her shoulders across her shoulders here. It's not really, but it's giving the illusion as if it is. So I think Hasbro really nailed this figure. Again, I'll put B-roll shots in of up close of this figure. Looks awesome. 100% by my personal opinion. With that being said, guys, let's go to final thoughts and wrap up this video. Alright guys, final thoughts on the Star Wars Black Series 6-inch Bo-Katan Kryze figure, paid by the indomitable, of course, Katie Sarkoff from the Mandalorian TV show. Should you buy this figure? Absolutely. If you're a fan of Star Wars, if you like Katie Sarkoff, if you like Mandalorian, if you like the Bo-Katan character, 100% buy this figure. Probably some of the best design and execution I've ever seen on an action figure, with the weird elbows that spin in that weird 360 pose. Same thing with the legs in that weird 360 pose, which we talked about in the breakdown segment. Very different sort of design, but loaded with articulation. As you saw in the B-roll shots, you could put this in many, many poses, and really better than most male figures, I would say, in this day and age. This is probably one of the best designed female action figures on the market. 100% by my personal opinion. I love how the guns don't need to worry about the trigger guards. You can slip the figures in, rather the hands into the guns. The left one seemed easier than the right one. I struggled with a little bit on the right hand gun with the right hand. Just if you break the hand in a little bit, if you work the plastic, it might be a little more malleable to slip the gun in very easy. You don't have to worry about getting caught through that trigger guard. Great attention to detail for Hasbro. I love what they did with that figure. I'm very, very happy and pleasantly surprised with this figure. Would I buy more of them? Absolutely. When I pick up the Sasha Banks one, I'm not 100% sure yet if I want to get the entire Death Watch group. I wanted Mando, I wanted Bo-Katan. Those two figures I 100% wanted to have in my collection. She looks great. I love, again, mentioned that I love what you could do with the figure. The design with the color scheme, the head sculpt, the helmet, as you can see it on the figure right now. Great attention to design. Love everything that Hasbro has done with this figure. Again, would I buy this figure? Heck yeah. If you can buy it for your collection, 100% buy it. I think it's an awesome, awesome figure. For in-box collectors and people who are out-of-box collectors, as again mentioned, I'm going to keep this one out of packaging. I didn't talk about the beginning of the video, but she's going to be out of packaging next to my Mandalorian figure. I want to have both of them side by side. I think it'd be very, very cool on a display shelf. 100% think this is a buy in my personal opinion. With that being said, I really like this Star Wars Black Series 6-inch figure of Bo-Katan. Remember to click that like button on the page. Click the subscribe button. When you subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon to be notified of my latest videos. And of course, last but not least, click Windows over here to watch more of my content. Take care, guys. See you next video. And bye-bye.